Today on Food Journey, I'm reconnecting with J2, food writer and enthusiast, to discuss food connections.
J2, welcome again to Food Journey.
Hi Sonia, how are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. So today, I've come here to talk to you about food connections, and I thought you might be just the perfect person to have this type of discussion with. Moi, he says.
Yes, because of the way that this relationship that I have with food, yeah, I understand, I would like to say quite a bit instinctively about food connections.
Even before your role as a food journalist, do you think?
Yes. Food has always been something that's been an anchor, if you like, if you will, for me. It's a place I go to, it feels like a place of safety.
Yes.
I can hide there, I can relax there, and I can create there. So food for me is very important.
That's lovely. And where do you think that we actually start making our food connections? Do you think it's as early as infancy, or do you think it's sort of starts when you're more aware of what you are eating and have a little bit more control over that?
No. When you see an infant crying and the mother opens the breast to provide breast milk and the infant latches onto that, that's a food connection.
So when we speak in terms of heritage, how important is that sort of as a base of our food tree?
Well, you are born into what really is your heritage as far as food is concerned, depending on which tribe you appear, through to come into the world. So whatever they have known as food is what you're going to experience as food to start with.
Right.
That is typically your heritage. So it is as you grow as a person that you now begin to learn about options and you begin to make choices regarding the kind of food journey you want to have.
Exactly. So when you were talking about heritage and you're talking about our parents and things like that, but many of us live in communities where we have people from different parts of, let's say, from Nigeria, or even some foreigners living in your community. Do you feel that we actually are outgoing in the sense that we venture into other types of food cultures here?
Food cultures. It depends on how you grew up. If you were encouraged to be an adventurer, it's easier to do. For many of my friends, they're only just discovering all the food types at an older age.
Right.
They were not necessarily comfortable with exploration. And that is probably as a result of something they found growing up or they encountered growing up. So say one parent might be choosy regarding food. A child might decide to follow that line and be choosy regarding food. Or you might have a food accident, a particular taste experience that didn't sit well with you. And on the basis of that, you avoid all the foods that have that particular ingredient in it.
Do you have any particular food hang-ups yourself?
Me?
Anything you don't like, or anything that you didn't like before that you suddenly did like, and why?
Oh, there was a brief one. I think it had to do with, there was one with beans and then there was one with mushrooms.
Oh,
And those both hang-ups happened when I was much younger.
right.
But I got rid of them when I was younger too. Mushrooms a bit later, beans a lot earlier. So I started cooking beans myself and started making beans the way I wanted. And that changed my perception and understanding of, the experience of beans. But with mushrooms, yes, I started cooking mushrooms, but I was a full-fledged adult when I really could enjoy and pair mushrooms properly. Because the way they were cooked when I was younger just didn't endear me to that ingredient at the time. But now I do different things with mushrooms.
And you're quite an experimenter in the kitchen, quite a good cook.
I tried
What
to
I've seen.
express myself.
You're being modest. For me, it was coriander, believe it or not. And it's quite interesting because my coriander experience came from eating it somewhere where I didn't quite understand the connection with the food it was prepared with. It just didn't seem to sit. Now, when I went to England, started living there, schooling there, I actually had the experience of going to a proper Indian restaurants where coriander now was the star of the show for so many dishes, and my goodness, how everything just changed, you know, and I fell in love with it. And now any chance I have, you know, can we put some coriander in there? So it's interesting. And then that whole thing about traveling, exploration, movement, migrations of people, you find yourself in different lands. Now, talk to me a little bit about what happens when you suddenly venture to a new place.
There are two types of people in my experience that, who travel and have food experiences. The first are the dyed-in-the-wool traditionalists who really simply do not know how to experience other cultures. They have strong mental blocks. So they go somewhere, they keep looking for the Nigerian restaurant in that area.
Oh! So what's the second type of person?
That is the food adventurer, the gourmand, the Epicurean.
People like us.
I would hesitate to say that my experience is limited, but at the same time, I do try to broaden that experience.
Exactly.
Even though I'm in Nigeria, I try to introduce all sorts of elements into my cooking.
Right.
Asian, German, I don't care where it comes from, French, something different. Give it a certain frisson that is...
A little pizzazz.
Yes, a little bit off, the beaten path, as it were. So you can take meatballs and you can make them, in two ways. You make them the Swedish way, and at the same time you add Nigerian accents.
Exactly.
So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. So all of this comes from traveling.
So you're talking a little bit more about food fusion here. But let me put you in a situation. Let me take you to Russia. Now you are there on business and you've arrived and you're hungry. What's the first thing that you order at the hotel?
I would probably have done some research before I get to Russia, just to make sure I can order properly in the first place. So that is how I would approach it. So off the top of my head, when you say Russia, the first thing that comes to my mind is vodka. I'm sorry. It's just what it is.
And me.
Yes, it's just what it is.
Right.
Because we all know vodka, Russian, the cold, blah, blah, blah. All
So
that.
some caviar,
Yeah.
some bellinis.
But I do know that Russia does a lot of sturgeon.
Sturgeon.
Yes.
Love that. So I would definitely be into that. And I might have actually gone as far as finding somebody there who might be able to guide me in that way, because the food in a travel experience for me is paramount.
Very
It's the sights, but it's also the food, Yes, I like that. Okay, so you asked me a question about where you would put me and what I'd do.
If I were to take you to somewhere not too far from Russia and place you in Germany, what would you do there?
The first thing I think about is sausages. I think about pickled things. I think about sauerkraut. I think about great huge haunches of pork knuckle and mashed potatoes. It's really heavy, involved eating food, sit down food. And
I would give you two options of things to drink. Two
beer.
Options. One, what's the second one?
I don't know.
You know about German Riesling?
No, now that's a white wine, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm a red wine girl.
Germany and Austria have Rieslings that are pretty good. And they also have what they call ice wine, which is iced wine really, but yes, which is actually sweet late harvest grapes. So pretty sweet, but pretty potent at the same time.
Lovely. Now, do you think on a sociological level that going to, say, Russia, you would gravitate towards making a point of meeting other people and, speaking about food, maybe getting invited to their house or taking up an invitation? How far would you take it in the quest of food exploration and connections?
As far as I could possibly go. The thing is, once I have an opportunity to talk about food and you have people around you who are lovers of food and they happen to listen to what I'm saying, the tendency will be for them to want to introduce me to what they have,
right,
or what they cook, or what they experience in their locality, or even at home. So depending on what comes up, I would definitely follow through and see how far we can go.
And would you reciprocate and try and maybe create something that is typically West African for them?
If the opportunity and the ingredients were there.
There you go. So maybe, in a nutshell, we come full circle back to the person who's looking for the Nigerian food there. How do you think that these communities of, these enclaves of being able to find West African produce arise in foreign countries?
Well, the thing is, first of all, to have a collective of West African people in those particular spaces. So if you have enough of them, you would have enough of a demand that they would have someone bring West African produce to satisfy that demand. Immediately the demand gets to a certain level, it becomes a business opportunity.
Yes.
And once that is established, then someone has to step into the space. And that is what is happening around the world.
Yes.
So in America, in Europe, in Dubai, in I think possibly even China, you have Nigerian food sellers.
There would be.
Who are selling food ingredients that are Nigerian, typically.
And do you feel that that's how communities, international communities grow and learn more about each other culturally? Because you'll find in that place where there is West African food, you'll get the indigents of that place now coming to experiment and see what that's about. And then we get this happening. Cross cultures, do you think that happens? Or do you think we just come for the food and then just...
Oh, no. For example, if you happen to work with a particular person who's from a different nation at work, and you strike up a friendship with the person, it is entirely possible you might go to that person's place for a party. And if you do that, you would get to experience their food. Or like a friend of mine who works with, who's a lawyer and does work for Indians, gets invited to types of Indian feasts that very few people are privy to. So he goes in there and he's eating what they eat, not what they sell.
Commercially
not what is commercially available.
Good.
What they actually eat. So he gets to eat what is truly indigenous and also qualitative, where that particular group is concerned.
That's interesting because I've been in various restaurants before. Let's say we're an Indian restaurant or a Chinese restaurant or wherever. Thai restaurants, and I will see indigents in that restaurant, and I always say to the waiter, what are they eating? And very often, as you say, it's something that might not even be on the menu.
Precisely.
The underground stuff.
Precisely.
So that's very, very, very true.
Precisely.
Excellent. So I wanted to do a little exercise with you and just kind of create our own individual food tree. Do you think that would be fun?
Oh yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot.
So you've got your tree in front of you. We're going to show viewers graphically what we're talking about. We're going to sort of draw our trees as we're talking. What would be at the base of your tree, the trunk of your tree? Are we talking about the roots?
The roots.
Oh, we're talking, the roots.
As a matter of fact, I would go so far to say even the seed, which becomes a tree.
So the seed is...
The seeds.
Is it mom and dad, the seed?
The seed is mom and dad.
Good. So your seeds.
Mom and dad. Now I'm a Yoruba boy, man, and I grew up eating Yoruba food. But the one thing that I could say was the seed was my mother taking me into the kitchen because I was curious enough and beginning to teach me how to cook. So that really is the seed for my own food tree.
I love that.
Me experiencing cooking in my mother's kitchen. And from there, my food tree started to grow.
My side, my father is Edo and my mother is West Indian from Jamaica. Now, my first food experiences, the memories that I hold really dear and I remember so well, I can actually smell the food right now in front of me as I'm talking about it, was with my grandmother. So we have that conduit that rises up. So we've got a tree trunk. And from that, of course, branches start sprouting out. One of the branches that I want to put out right now is travel, okay? So if you can think of the strongest influence that you have had as you have grown up, traveling to a particular place. Let's put that on that branch, and then we can sort of have little branches coming out of that as well.
Okay. Travel for me, for the most part, has usually been about going out for business. But at the same time, I end up going to one or two places that really quite interesting.
Okay.
I do business, or I have done business with a principal that is out of Spain, Cadiz to be precise. Now Cadiz is a waterfront town stroke city, and it's got a shipbuilding culture. So it means that you're going to have lots of seafood, and at the same time, because it's Spain, you would have access to wines, access to pork. Pork is very big in Spain, as you know. They do a lot of pork products out of Spain. One of the experiences I had was a whole fish being baked in a salt dome.
I've seen that. And then you sort of crack
it, and you would expect that. Would it taste too salt? No, the fish wasn't salty at all. It was just very tender and flaky.
Yes.
And very moist.
Because the salt, the crust of that salt actually acts more of like an insulation for the cooking.
It insulates it.
Lovely.
So it was amazing. And on that particular journey, that particular trip, towards the end, I sat down and ate the largest pork knuckle you've ever seen in your life, about this big, and with excellent wines.
Wow.
All Spanish.
So you have that beautiful food memory there. Now for me, I will say Italy, because that's one of my favorite places that I traveled when I was quite, impressionable. And the joy of being there and living with families from different parts of Italy. So you have Rome, I went to Perugia, and I went to Taormina. So I'm going to various different places, a different topography, etc., different types of people, different populations, sizes, etc. For me, one thing was common to all those regions, and that was the joy of sitting down as a family to a huge meal. It was almost as if I woke up with this just excitement for what was to come, because I knew that that day it was going to be an amazing breakfast, an amazing lunch with just a spread like this, and an amazing dinner with conversation at the fore, and family showing affection, which was something that I really enjoyed. People hugging arm around them, feeding each other. And for me, so that was that's a strong branch for me.
Yes. There's a lot I could say, but since we're talking about travel specifically, I'll stay with travel.
Okay.
For me, Italy has been two cities, Rome and Milan, because of the time that I was there. And it was just on the back of a business trip that I would go there to those two places. So I didn't have too much time to explore. But I discovered zuppa di pesci, which is...
Yes! Fish soup.
Fish soup. But I discovered that it wasn't just fish soup, it was a feast. It was a seafood feast.
What was in that bowl?
Everything you can imagine. It was amazing. And I remember coming back to Lagos to a particular restaurant back in the day. I think they used to be called Il Sorriso, if I'm correct, but they're no longer there now. And I ordered zuppa di pesci, and it was off the menu, but they were happy to make it for me
because they
knew that I knew. And that was a result of travel.
So you became that person literally who somebody else is saying, "What's he eating?"
What's he eating? Precisely. And I remember going to Singapore, and that totally blew my lid off, because Singapore is a melting pot for about 5 different food cultures. There's Indian, there's Chinese, there's Malay, and then there are other influences there. One restaurant particularly that I ate at had Asian and French fusion food. Amazing.
That's interesting, because you got that fussy and then that sort of
spicy,
relaxed
with full of umami sort of cooking.
Wow.
So it's amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. Now I've tried to incorporate some of that into my own personal cooking.
Do you think that there are people who just have a block to it all?
I know people who only eat because they need to eat. They don't have that food soul,
right,
as I might want to call it. You don't find that they look forward to eating some types of food. They are hungry. Oh, just give me what they know.
Yes.
So give me my amala with ewedu sort of situation, and add goat meat to it, and they're fine. They're happy.
That's it.
But then you could take that same goat meat, instead of cooking it the way it's cooked, you could braise it, or you could infuse it with spices and roast it slowly until it's all about tender, but yet it is filled with the taste of those spices.
Exactly.
Now, those are different ways of experiencing the same goat meat. And that same bakery that you so you eat with the ewedu and the amala. Someone else could make it in such a way that it is so smooth and so delicate.
That you have a different mouthfeel. Yeah, and those things are important to a foodie, but then again, maybe not important to
But
somebody
most
with a
people are
block.
like, oh, the berry is okay. Ah, yeah, it was hot. What does it taste like? It tastes like amala, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's the end of it. So, Nigeria has evolved because we no longer sort of have that kind of, there's a majority now that seafood as something special and something to be studied and something to critique and
I wouldn't use the expression majority. I would say there are more people.
more.
People.
So you wouldn't say majority?
No, not at all. We're not even remotely close to that.
Oh, right.
If you were to look at the population of Lagos as 20-something odd million,
Right.
we do not have up to 100,000 people that are in that category.
Exactly.
But guess what? That 100,000 will change the rest.
Exactly.
And that's where you come in. That's where I come in.
Exactly. I love that. That's very inspiring. That gave me chills. So going back to our food tree now, one of the things I'd love to do today that I'm going to go off and do in the kitchen, unfortunately without you, but I'll make sure that you taste what I'm going to make, is I'd love to take one of my food experiences, one of the places I've lived for a long time, for 26 years in fact, Ghana, our neighbor. Yes, so, and I would, you know, all those beautiful things, and I would, yes, and I would like to make some groundnut soup.
Interesting.
One of my favorites, and one of the dishes that I find when people come to Ghana is the thing that everybody wants to eat. I think it's because peanuts are so universal that most people are used to that taste in their mouth.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's being adventurous, but I know I'm going to be okay. It's going to taste peanutty, most people think. It's quite an involved dish to get right because there's certain things you must do to the peanut paste before you now go ahead and boil it with the other ingredients. Yes. So that's my sort of quintessential food tree dish. So, JJ, I just want to ask you, what do you think is at the top of that tree, sort of at the canopy?
You know, when you look at a lot of trees, particularly trees that have flowers, the flowers are on the outside. And it's from the flowers that a lot of pollination and transfer takes place to grow other trees. So essentially what that is it's when you pass this knowledge on. That is when the legacy stands and the heritage can be maintained.
That is really wise talk. I love that. It's a beautiful answer and it is a totally accurate one. JJ, it has been wonderful talking to you. Absolutely wonderful. And I hope we have many more food adventures together.
Oh, I will look forward to that. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
See you next time when I share some recipes from my personal food tree.